A little boy is missing his father. He hasn't seen him for days.
Bradley, get out of that dirt.
Mom, I'm having fun.
No, get out of that dirt.
But Daddy is much closer than he thinks. In Houston, Texas, early in her life, Susan Wright is a carefree woman.
Two pictures emerge of Susan. Yes, she was a topless dancer, but people also described her as sort of your hometown girl. She was a cheerleader, that she wasn't this sort of trashy person.
After a short stint in a strip joint, Susan becomes a waitress and beguiles the man of her dreams, Jeff Wright.
They had a very romantic and intense courtship, and he showered her with presents. They married when she was pregnant with their son.
She's quite the cook, ain't she?
In 1999, the Wright household is a picture of happiness. Charming Susan, the perfect host.
Thanks all for coming.
Susan felt that she had to present this sunny picture to the rest of the community.
She would participate in gatherings in the neighborhood. She had friends in the neighborhood.
But very early in the marriage, Susan is unhappy.
Susan and Jeffrey's marriage started out sweet and loving and tender. It did not end up that way.
Jeff is not measuring up as her ideal husband.
Woohoo! Look at that! Look at that! Look at that ass, man! That's the girl.
Jeffrey had a real dark side. Jeffrey had a drug problem, but said he had it under control.
Bring it on! Come on! I told you this place was great, man.
People said that he continued to do drugs, including crack cocaine, that he would go off and have these threesomes with strippers, that he was an abusive husband.
Okay! Come to daddy.
Home becomes a battlefield. Husband and wife, the combatants.
What the hell are you been doing all day?
Raising two children?
Susan claimed that Jeffrey constantly criticized her, that the house had to be in perfect condition all the time.
Where's my dinner?
It's in the oven.
I'm sick of working all day, working hard for this family while you sit on your fat ass watching soap opera.
You call getting drunk working, do you?
And she tried to comply.
You had a problem with me having a few drinks after work, haven't you?
A few drinks? What a joke. You're a drunk.
According to Susan, their relationship became at first verbally abusive, and then Jeffrey became physically abusive.
I hate you.
You just try it and see what happens.
But if Susan's being abused, she never tells the police.
There were never any official reports made by Susan alleging any abuse or violence between her and Jeff.
He's been hitting me again.
Susan says she couldn't leave him because as a Christian, she didn't believe in a divorce, and she also feared that he would take away their children.
What can I do?
To Susan, there is only one way out. On the night of January 13th, 2003, Susan will be the dominant one. She is luring Jeff into a trap.
I don't think that Jeff wanted a divorce or wanted out, but I believe Susan probably did, at least that night.
She is not making love to her husband.
You do this more often, huh?
She is taking control.
Kinky, ain't it? What's he gonna do with that?
she was really angry.
What are you doing that for? Get off me!
In Houston, Texas, married couple Jeff and Susan Wright are good at keeping secrets.
Cook, ain't she?
Nobody knows their marriage is in trouble.
Jeff was proud of his relationship, and as well as Susan, they both defended their relationship during any kinds of troubled times, according to their families.
You call getting drunk working, do you?
This started out as a very passionate relationship, but became a very controlling one, allegedly.
I will hit you.
You just try it and see what happens.
Susan now wants to take control permanently. The bondage is not for kinky thrills.
What are you doing that for?
Candle wax had been melted and dripped on Jeffrey's scrotum.
What are you doing? Susan! Susan, what are you doing? Susan! No!
The first place Susan stabbed Jeffrey was in the eye, followed by many more stab wounds in the face and neck.
Susan does more than stab her husband. She attempts to annihilate him.
Our face is our personality. It's our essence. She wanted it destroyed.
But they are not alone in the house.
There was a knock on the bedroom door. It was Susan's little boy. Susan put on her robe, got him back to sleep.
Hey, sweetie, what's the matter? What was all that noise? It's just Daddy and I playing a game. Why don't we get you back to bed? Okay?
And then she went back to the bedroom and resumed stabbing her husband.
She went and got a second knife and continued to stab him.
Are you ready for some more, honey?
Susan stabbed her husband at least 196 times, almost 50 times, in the face and neck.
Do you like that, honey?
Not any single one of the cuts or stabs would have caused the death. So this man's death would have taken a long time and would have been in all likelihood quite painful, quite excruciating.
Jeff Wright eventually succumbs to his numerous wounds. His death, brutal overkill.
This is one of the most, if not the most, violent murder I've ever seen of a woman to her husband.
This is an upfront, very personal type of murder. This is the sort of thing, particularly with the mutilation and the cuts to the genitals, that tells you that the perpetrator had a sadistic streak to them, or that they truly wanted to punish the individual they were cutting.
She didn't just want him dead, but wanted him gone, obliterated, wiped off the face of this earth, wanted him punished, wanted him to cease to exist.
Susan buries her husband in the backyard, their children's playground. Then starts calling everyone she knows.
I'd just been to boxer practice, so it was all aggressive. And he'd been drinking.
She talked to Jeff's family on the phone and told them that, he had become violent and had left the house.
He punched me in the stomach and he kicked me.
Police think they are dealing with routine domestic violence.
No. He just drove off.
She claimed that he attacked her, had attacked the children.
No.
And she went and filed a report with the police and even showed the police the wounds that she said she suffered during their fight.
I just want to be
For
loved.
friends and family, it is a complete shock.
We never had anybody come and say they witnessed any violence between those two.
The picture Susan paints isn't the Jeff anyone knows. And within days, the family becomes suspicious. Then, Susan cracks.
She was talking to many people, including her mother, and her stories just weren't adding up. The mother started cooperating with police, and finally, Susan admitted that this wasn't just a fight.
He didn't really run away.
What do you mean?
He's dead.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting.
That she did stab him many times and did bury him in the backyard.
He's buried in the back of our house. I didn't know what else to do.
The grave isn't hard to find. Jeff's body reveals this isn't a simple murder, but a prolonged, torturous ordeal.
197 incised wounds, stabbing, and cuts were identified. The medical examiner says there were probably more. They just can't be documented because they were just repeatedly in the same location. There's no doubt that Jeff suffered for a period of time while his own wife administered those blows. He was aware of who was doing that.
Susan confesses to stabbing her husband, but claims special circumstances.
She claimed that he attacked her, had attacked the children, and that she killed him in self-defense. That was her claim.
The jury doesn't believe her. In March 2004, Susan Wright is found guilty of murder. She is serving 20 years in prison. Was Susan a battered wife who finally gets her revenge? Only she can say.
Even if you are in a bad marriage, even if you are married to a monster, murder's not the way to go. Society will only forgive you to a point. If you kill somebody, you become just as bad as the person you killed.
I can understand most of this murder, but in the end, the extreme brutality and overkill is a little hard to take.